Please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Captain's Log, Supplemental. When we get to the more famous inmates, I feel it my personal duty to delouse them in front of the other inmates. I just love blinding them as a suitable handicap for when they're integrated into Gen Pop. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmates number 155 to the ISO cubes. Inmates number 155 has featured quite heavily more recently in the news, because what they did was so truly reprehensible, genuinely despicable on a level that is well and truly unacceptable. Because of that, if you have not heard of this person, I'm going to insert a trigger warning, because we are going to be discussing something that will get this video demonetized, in the form of sexual assault. There we go, the video's demonetized. Well done. Smash the like please and drive the engagement up, it really helps this channel. For this video, I would like to tell you a bit about inmates number 155, the crime they committed, the trial and the sentence, and perhaps look a little at the law itself so we can understand whether or not the sentence is accurate or reflective of the nature of the crimes they committed and what the guidance indicates. When an individual goes as far as inmates number 155 does to commit as many crimes against as many different people, the sentence has to be severe. In the United Kingdom, there are certain sentences many would call for. Those are not a possibility, and I'm sure some of you will say, unfortunately, is the case. Inmates number 155's name is David Carrick. David Carrick is going to be with us for quite some time. And something that makes David Carrick's crimes even worse is the position of power he held, not only within the community, but from a completely legal standpoint, which when you understand who he is, you will understand just how severe this is, how much of a violation it is, as if the nature of the crime itself wasn't severe enough. When one holds control over another in the way that David Carrick did, you will understand why many will say it is unfortunate the more severe sentences cannot be explored. So let us now discuss who inmates number 155, aka David Carrick, is. David Carrick was born on the 4th of January 1975 in Salisbury, Wiltshire. His parents were a cleaner and a Royal Artillery soldier, and he was raised briefly at the Bulford military camp. When his sister was born, younger sister, the family moved to Durrington. Briefly, he had served in the military, and in 2001 left, became a police officer with the Metropolitan Police. In 2009, he joined the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Team. If that at all rings any bells, it's because you will have heard of Wayne Couzens and the murder of Sarah Everard. Wayne Couzens from Deal, Kent, didn't exactly do himself any favours when he rented a car, went looking for someone to take out and took him out, and is serving a whole life term for it. They're going to become very good friends soon. During his time in the military and in the police, they had received multiple complaints about his behaviour concerning DV or domestic abuse. He was still recertified to remain an armed police officer in 2017. Work colleagues gave Carrick the nickname Bastard Dave due to his propensity for cruelty, something that is somewhat arcane in the UK police forces because those that do it are few and far between, and also because they get absolutely flayed by committees and then invariably lose their jobs. The failings of the Army and of the Metropolitan Police to allow David Carrick to remain in his post is a damning statement of their own ineptitude, an ineptitude that I have mocked, bullied, criticised, parodied on a regular basis, because they failed so many times, and with so many ample warnings, they did not act in accordance with their own rules. This is where his arrogance came to the forefront, and is why the nature of his crimes extend over a number of years. And I mentioned Wayne Couzens earlier because that's how he got busted. So with this all in mind, we need to now skip ahead to the crimes of David Carrick. The crimes committed by David Carrick took place between 2003 and 2020. During this time, David Carrick abused, and sexually assaulted multiple women that he had met using Tinder and Badoo. Using his job as an armed police officer, he would gain their trust to emphasize his importance. He then went on to develop multiple abusive relationships with those victims. Methods he would use to abuse them would include multiple forms of degradation. This include physical abuse with a belt, imprisonment in rather small confined spaces. He would then also urinate on his victims along with sexually abusing them. He would control what they wore, when or what they ate, and where they would sleep, with quite a number of those victims being banned from eating altogether. Later on, it was discovered that 9 times the police had been alerted to DV allegations and sexual assault. 9 times between the period of him joining the police force until the moment he was arrested. He was arrested in October of 2021 because one of his victims, after seeing Wayne Couzens be arrested, stepped forward because they felt they then had the power to finally speak up on what he had done to them, with this victim, Jane Doe, being subjected to a date sexual assault, i.e. roofied in some manner. So in October 2021, David Carrick was arrested. He went on to initially plead not guilty to all charges against him. He was, for the duration of his time until his imprisonment, held on remand in Belmarsh, which is in southeast London. And just to go back, I would like to go through a timeline of events so you have the best context. In 2002, while still in a 2-year probationary period, David Carrick is accused of harassment and assault against a former partner. He was not arrested, and this was not referred to the Directorate of Professional Standards. Later on in the year, he was subject to the first of 5 public complaints made between 2002 and 2008. 2 allegations that he'd been rude were dealt with by management action locally. 3 relating to incivility and the use of force, which were in turn withdrawn or dismissed. In 2003, his first known victim is sexually assaulted. In 2004, he sexually assaults another woman. Later on in the year, he's involved in a DV incident, but nothing came of it. Between 2006 and 2009, he sexually assaults a woman who he abuses, threatens with violence, and demeans. This particular Jane Doe does not come forward because she believes that no one will believe her. Later on in the year, he was transferred to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command. In 2009, he sexually assaults at least 3 more women. There is a gap between 2009 to 2015. In 2015, he sexually assaulted a 45-year-old woman. In 2016, David Carrick is a suspect in a Hampshire police investigation following an allegation of harassment. Nothing came of it. In October 2016, he repeatedly sexually assaulted a woman he met online. This included causing injuries and urinating on her. In 2017, rather interestingly, when he should have been vetted after 10 years of service, he is only now re-vetted and passes. Considering his background, this seemed a bit sus. He's also spoken to by Thames Valley police officers after he's thrown out of a nightclub for being drunk. He also meets a woman on a night out, who he then goes on to sexually assault multiple times. She described him as totally controlling and aggressive, and that he regularly urinated in her mouth, humiliated her, and threatened her with violence. In 2017, he meets a woman on an online dating site, who he then went on to sexually assault in the shower. In July 2018, David Carrick meets a 41-year-old woman online who he then went on to assault sexually while she cleans his bathroom. In 2019, Hertfordshire police receive a third-party report of assault and criminal damage involving an argument between David Carrick and a woman during a domestic incident. Neither party is supportive of police involvement, and nothing more happens because of it. The incident was referred to the Metropolitan Police's Directorate of Professional Standards, and David Carrick is given words of advice in relation to informing his chain of command about off-duty incidents. In July of 2020, he sexually assaults another woman and demeans her, degrades her, humiliates her. In July of 2021, the first one comes forward and he gets well and truly screwed. So with this all in mind, we should now skip ahead to the trial of David Carrick, a man who up to this point believes himself innocent. About that. In December of 2022, when David Carrick appeared before the Central London Old Bailey Criminal Court, he pled guilty, rather than have a trial prolong this, to 49 charges, 24 of which were rape, related to 12 female victims. Skipping ahead less than a month, on the 16th of January, at Southwark Crown Court. He then went on to plead guilty to 4 more charges of sexual assault. That is 28 counts of rape. For the charge of rape, we go to the Sexual Offences Act of 2003. Yes, I'm going to do the legal side because, well, the trial part was quite short. A person, A, commits an offence if he intentionally penetrates the vagina, anus, or mouth of another person, B, with his penis. B does not consent to the penetration, and A does not reasonably believe that B consents. 2. Whether a belief is reasonable is to be determined having regard to all the circumstances, including any steps A has taken to ascertain whether B consents. A person guilty of any offence under this section is liable on conviction on indictment to imprisonment for life. In total, he was found guilty of 49 offences, with 28 being for rape. The others were attempted rape, sexual assault, controlling and coercive behaviour. I should add though, he did in fact admit to a total of 71 serious sexual offences. I can't be the only person that already thinks this. This individual is not leaving a prison alive. He is 48 years old, and he has committed enough crimes to put him away for the rest of his life. Even if he was well behaved for 1 life sentence, it would be really bad optics to even consider letting him out. Along with it being, certainly in his later life, a bit risky, as if it wasn't risky enough already. Upon being found guilty, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley had said that the force had failed and David Carrick should not have been a police officer. He also went on to apologise after it had then emerged that David Carrick came to the attention of officers over 9 previous incidents. So as he's pled guilty to all these charges, we can now go straight to the sentence. For this, I'm going to read a statement from the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service. Peter Burt, head of the Complex Casework Unit, had said today is about recognising the outstanding bravery of the victims. It often takes courage for anyone to come forward and report a rape, but in this case, to overcome the mental and physical oppression they endured may have felt insurmountable at times. We've heard the accounts of the women who have suffered at Carrick's hands. He took away their control, their right to choose their freedom, in some cases both physically and mentally. We cannot undo the pain and anguish of what they have endured, but I hope they can take this as a first step to rebuilding their lives, knowing he cannot harm them or any other women. We are grateful to every woman who has come forward and supported this case. With each report that came in, we had a clearer picture of who Carrick was and what he had done. The similarities between the victim accounts, detailing mental and physical torment at the hands of the same man, were our case. We would not want to be where we are today without you, the victims, taking that step forward and providing us with the vital evidence needed to prosecute Carrick. With your help, the Crown Prosecution Service worked with the investigation team to build such a strong case that Carrick had no choice but to plead guilty. When he was being sentenced, protesters had gathered outside Southwark Crown Court. Some of the victims even attended the court to watch Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb sentence him. He attended the court dressed up in a dark suit, white shirt and tie, has to be said in an article, flanked by officers. In her opening remarks, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb said that David Carrick had taken monstrous advantage of his victims with whom he had brutal, controlling and coercive relationships with. She told him that he behaved as if he were untouchable, adding it was a spectacular downfall for a man charged with upholding the law, having lost his liberty, job and status. She went on to also say these convictions represent a spectacular downfall for a man charged with upholding the law, and empowered to do so even to the extent of being authorized to bear a firearm in the execution of his duty. Behind a public appearance of propriety and trustworthiness, you took monstrous advantage of women. You brazenly raped and sexually assaulted a number of women, some very brutally, and you behaved as if you were untouchable. You were bold and at times relentless, trusting that no victim would overcome her shame and fear to report you. For nearly 2 decades, you were proved right, but now a combination of those 12 women, by coming forward, and your police colleagues by acting on their evidence, have exposed you and brought you low. You have lost your liberty, your job and your status. You have before you the prospect of a difficult time in custody for many years. David Carrick, inmates number 155, found guilty of so many charges, was sentenced to life times 36. Yes, he was given 36 life sentences and will serve more than 30 years in prison before he is considered eligible for parole. By that point, he'll be nearly 80 years old. I doubt he will survive, nor do I believe he'll ever see the outside of a prison during the remainder of his years. 36 life sentences. Astonishing how somebody in such a position of trust could violate that trust. You are meant to uphold and represent the law, a power bestowed upon you because you are supposed to be the best of us to protect and serve us, and you fail. Enjoy your time